Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Jack Threlfall Show. This is the interview segment for this week's episode, and we are joined by a very, very special guest, Nadim. Welcome to the show, Nadim.
Hi, thanks for having me. Thank you for bringing me on.
Awesome. We always start with a little description of what your role is in motorsport and how a race weekend looks from your eyes. So, could you explain a little bit about what your role is in motorsport?
Yeah, my role is as a media intern, but mainly it's been editorial. So I've mainly been working on the website side of things and been writing a lot. On the weekends, I help a lot with the live blogs on the F1 website. I do a lot of interview transcriptions and stuff like that. And I'll write like a news story or something if something's happened. So that's mainly my role, and it's a pretty fun one, I have to say.
Absolutely. Those internships and opportunities to work inside Formula One, it's really something that's kind of growing in interest as motorsport expands globally. And be really interesting for, I think, this interview to hear about the insight of what an F1 weekend is like from being inside Formula One versus, most fans' experiences is outside just watching the broadcasts. So race weekend for you, it starts on Friday, right? In free practice. What's that day like for you on a typical Grand Prix weekend?
That day, usually getting about an hour earlier before everything kind of kicks off and starts, but different people get in at different points. So I haven't been to a race weekend or Grand Prix yet, so I'm usually working from the office. So you get in and you get prepared and you get all the articles ready. You get kind of prepared for the blog, because once it starts, it's pretty intense. And it's all like a bit of a ramp up as the weekend goes on. And, you go an hour early and you probably leave about 2-3 hours after everything is done. So yeah, it's quite intense, but it is some of the most rewarding work you'll do. And if you're having a great, exciting weekend, which the season has been, like every Grand Prix this year has been its own unique spectacle, then it's such a fun job to have.
Absolutely. The championship we had last year, I think for many people, that was one of the best kind of two-way title battles anyone had ever seen. And then the way it's evolved this year with the technical changes to the cars, all the eyes that are on Formula One. And you're right to say, like, every minute from the start of practice really counts for the teams and also for the media. What was the learning curve like then? Do you remember your first day going in? What was that experience like?
My first day, I was so nervous. I remember I was so nervous, but my boss at the time, he did my interview, so I kind of had like a bit of a relationship with him to begin with. So on the first day, he kind of took me out and settled my nerves. And I think on my second day, people started to come into the office and I got to meet everyone. And before I started F1, I had never properly written like a news story before. I'd only done features and podcasts. And so that learning curve of me thinking I'm a great writer and then going in and I'm struggling in the beginning, and I had to get the F1 way of writing and the in-house style was so difficult. And even to this day, I'm still learning it, and I'm like 5-6 months in. But the amazing part is that each time I write, I feel more confident, I feel more comfortable. And the people will tell you that they're still learning as well. So people who have written for some of the best motorsport magazines or websites in the world will tell you they're still figuring out as well. So it helps to have such amazing people that I work with. But yeah, it was such a difficult learning curve. And I remember being so frustrated once I called on my mom. I'm like, I'm not getting this. And she's like, it will take time. I'm like, no, but I need to get it now. And yeah, but after a while, it becomes repetitive. I think I've written like 4 or 5 news stories in a day now, and it becomes really easy. It becomes really kind of natural at a certain point. But yeah, it was a very difficult kind of learning curve for me.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially Formula One fans, listening to this now, you can imagine the transfer from being on the outside to being on the inside, right? And everyone has these expectations of what it might be like, what, people's kind of preconceptions of how it really works inside the office are. And then, contrasting that with what the reality is. Yeah. Do you remember when you first saw the advert for the job and when you had the idea that, hey, maybe working in Formula One could be a career path?
Yeah, I've been a F1 fan most of my life, so the idea of working F1 was something that never registered for me. But I was actually working at a law firm at the time because I actually studied to be a lawyer, but I hated it. And I started writing, doing sports writing in 2020 during the pandemic, and I joined this he's into sports journalism, and they kind of got an email from F1 and said these two positions are open. Can you send these around? And someone sent it to me, and I got a message from a friend that says you better apply, because everyone knew I was a huge F1 fan, and I applied, and I kind of forgot about it for a couple of weeks, and then they got an email back saying there's the interview. Can you come in on this day? And I went, okay. I went to the interview, and I was like 2 minutes late because I live far away from the office. And everyone was sat there, and I went, oh God, I'm late on my interview day. This is the worst thing that you can do. And I was so upset. But the interview went really well, and they gave us the task, and everything went great. And I didn't hear from them for weeks, and I just thought completely forgot about it. And I got a call one day, and I was just walking in the street. I just got a call, and I immediately I knew what it was about. Like I just saw the number and I went, "This is F1," and I got a call and told me, "Oh, you got it." And I got, "Oh, thank God! I needed to get out of that low job." But that day was just incredible for me. I remember it like, I just remember the feeling. I was like, "Oh my God, I'm working in F1. F1 are calling me to actually go work for them," and it's such an incredible feeling. And to this day, it's still kind of surreal at times.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Yeah, what a moment that must have been, and also for your family as well, right? They must have been so happy for you to see a career path getting out of that law system where obviously it wasn't meshing perfectly, and yeah, it's really special to be able to wake up and go to a job that you feel a real connection to and a passion for. You mentioned that you'd been a lifelong F1 fan.
Yeah.
Did you have favorite drivers going into it? What was your kind of perception of the sport in terms of now you're a corporate man, Nadim? I'm not going to ask you to pick a side on that, but before, what was it like? You know, who was you rooting for?
I have been a Lewis Hamilton fan for the longest time,
Sure.
but Sebastian, I saw an interview actually. I went on Lee McKenzie. She posted something the other day, and Sebastian Vettel said that everyone is a Ferrari fan. And he's actually right, because I grew up actually loving Felipe Massa as well. And I was a big fan of his. And when he lost that 2008 world title, I remember sitting on the floor thinking, oh God, like I like Lewis, but Massa's lost the title in Brazil. So yeah, but I think those two have been the drivers that I always admired, but Lewis more. Also kind of a fan of Robert Kubica. Always kind of thought to myself, oh, what would it have been if he never got into the accident? But yeah, he's been my guy for as long as I can remember. It's been one of my favorite, because I cover multiple sports. I think he's probably my favorite athlete. I think just who he is as a person, athlete, just always admired it.
Absolutely. It's so interesting to look back now. I remember during lockdown, I watched, I think it was Australia 2007, right? Lewis's first ever race. Obviously, I was a little kid at the time. I didn't remember it, but looking back on it, and I was just listening to the commentary, and the commentator James Allen said, you know how they do those, like obviously Crofty does it now, but like the little intros before the races where they sort of panning around the track and going through the grid. And James Allen had a line where he said, "There's something of a star in that boy." Lewis is like 21, first ever Formula One race, and in that race as well, he does Fernando into turn one, and he got a podium in that race, and it was just like. Looking back on it now, the impact he's had throughout Formula One history is incredible. Yeah. What's it like writing
it's
about
always
him
amazing.
then?
I did something the other day on him. What was it? I think it was after the qualifying in Canada, or was it after the race? I wrote an article about him and just kind of what he said. And it's always, I think, any time I write about a driver is pretty insane, because you get the interview codes and then you kind of go to the news story about them. But with Lewis, there's always something kind of surreal about it, and my dad as well is a huge Lewis Hamilton fan. My dad was a huge Ayrton Senna fan. So, if I'd always message him saying, I never really send my work to anyone, but the minute I wrote about Lewis, I just send it back home and like, look what I did today. Like it's Lewis. And I think it's special for me and my family, because we always kind of remember those Sundays where we sat around just watching F1, and we're trying to think, oh, will Lewis win this weekend, or or who's going to compete, who's going to challenge him, and now you're in this position where you get to write about him for a living. And I think it's always an amazing feeling. And yeah, it always makes you reminisce about when you're growing up and kind of going through everything, and now you're at a point where it's your job to write about Lewis Hamilton. It's pretty special.
It's pretty special. I can see it on your face just watching you describe it. The pride is really, really cool. You mentioned Lewis was among your favorite athletes. Beyond Formula One, who else is on that list? Is it that element of kind of being an icon for the sport and almost being bigger than the sport is what drives your kind of passion for Lewis? And who else do you see that in?
I love people that I think, like, I love watching athletes that I love watching greatness in a way. I think because it's such a hard thing to do, like, because there's so many talented, athletes around the world in every single sport, and then you get to the ones where they've just gone above everyone else, and it's so difficult to kind of comprehend how they do that. And Serena Williams is one person for me. I've never been able to understand how she won a Grand Slam pregnant, and it's something like that just blows my mind. I think Tiger Woods as well. I was big fan of Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal, but mainly Federer, and obviously LeBron James and Kobe Bryant. But there's so many of them that I kind of need to get a list. But I love watching Messi play. It's quite a few of them, and I just love watching people who are great at what they do, because you find that those are the ones that let 1 in a million chance. I think even when you watch Verstappen now, and I think it was Karun Chandak the other day that said Verstappen is in that kind of tail of driver that comes along every few years that you just don't believe how good he is. And watching Verstappen now, and you think, my God, like he's just like a superstar. Like he's really good at what he does. So I just love watching athletes who just go above and beyond kind of everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, Verstappen, I think you're absolutely right. I think, he was written into the history books from his first ever race because of his age and how young he was. Of course, also his father, there's plenty of Formula One drivers have fathers that were into motorsports on some level, or even Formula One drivers. But yeah, Max has been an incredible talent from day one, really. And to have all the eyes on him, it's so interesting in Formula One because there are only 20 drivers at a time. It's so different to a sport like, rugby. I suppose on the global stage, rugby is actually quite a small sport. There's only sort of 8 or 9 countries that are genuinely world class at rugby, whereas with football, it's more. But in Formula One, when you've only got 20 drivers, it's really going to put the pressure on someone who's so young coming into it. I wanted to ask, again, just about the role you have at F1 now and the interviewing process. What was the actual interview like? You mentioned your boss was the guy who actually did the interview, and that kind of helped you moving in on your first day. But could you speak about what, maybe not the direct questions, I suppose they might not love that, but the process of actually doing the interview was like, because we may have people listening that are applying for similar roles,
Yeah, I think that I did my interview kind of on the day with like 4 other people. So it was kind of everyone comes in, you get to know each other for like the first half an hour, and they ask you questions about F1, who's your favorite driver and all this stuff, and like which driver do you secretly like, and little taster questions like, oh, where would you like to see a race? I said Tokyo.
Oh wow,
because I had this
idea. Actually,
I had this idea of Mario Karts like in the streets of Tokyo, and I said let's do F1 cars and stuff like that. But yeah, you get little taster questions, and then you go into the interview, and they kind of ask you about yourself, and they give you tasks as well to see kind of what you come up with, and it's just different things as well. So I would say one of the things I tried to do was, one, you have to be yourself, but also when they give you tasks and they try and test you in a way, you need to be able to come up with something, I guess, different, but something kind of unique. It's like you need to be able to show that you can add value to what they already have, because it's quite it's a growing, like we've seen how huge F1 has become over the last couple of years, but especially last season. And so they seem to be looking for a lot of people who can bring something new. I think everyone is, and I think it's just that really. And yeah, I like the interview stage. I think they made you feel very comfortable, and they made you feel like you could be yourself. So it's nothing really to worry about. I just be yourself and just try and show that you can be of service to them.
Yeah, it's really interesting that they were kind of asking you those questions at the start just to maybe suss out people who didn't quite have their trivia background or their, to tell people's like passion for the sport, where it comes from. And I suppose I mean, Mario Kart, I would hide you right on the spot, Nadim. That's pretty, that's a good one. I'm really looking forward to getting Suzuka back on the calendar this year. Suzuka, to me, is an incredible track. That's coming up later in the year, of course, but that's a real gem on the calendar, in my opinion.
It's been so nice to have some of the old tracks back. Like I love Australia. I love the Grand Prix. And this was my first time ever working on the Australian Grand Prix, and it was difficult. Like the night shift, in F1 is difficult. You're driving to the office at like 2 a.m. But I absolutely loved the Grand Prix, and we had Canada, Montreal just the other weekend. I thought that was pretty cool as well. So to have Singapore, Suzuka back, I think it's nice. It's nice. It's really cool.
Yeah, I think a Tokyo Grand Prix would be reminiscent of Singapore a little bit in the way flying through the skyscrapers. It just creates an incredible like contrast when you just see what looks like a normal kind of high developed city and then these crazy cars. I mean, I think they'd spoken about a New York one before, right? But the plans never went through. But the kind of rumored New York Grand Prix has been around for a while.
I remember when I was a kid, didn't they have the one about doing one in London as well? The one where like I think it was around Buckingham Palace or something like that, if I remember correctly.
But I remember they did that there was an episode of Top Gear where they had all these cars lined up outside Buckingham Palace and they had the F1 cars there. It was for like some Jubilee thing. I know the Formula E race in the somewhere around Canary Wharf is like some exhibition centre near the Docklands in London, and they run because their cars are smaller and basically the tracks all happen on a much kind of windier scale. They run a track through the Docklands exhibition centre that's like it goes half through the building and then back out the other side. It's really weird, but a London one would be cool.
It will be. There's a lot of places I would love to see Grand Prix, but just like everyone wants to spot an F1, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are questions being asked now about like the calendar getting too busy, right? With 23 races. Yeah. That's a lot to cover on a website, right? That's plenty of work throughout the year. Every Grand Prix is more notes, more to cover. Yeah. But what are you in a practice session, in a kind of race F1 timed session? What are you looking for when you're putting stuff on the website, adding stuff down, doing your job and editing the content, bringing it to the website? Yeah. What's the process like of doing that? Is it pretty clear to you? This guy's gone off here, yellow flag here, that sort of thing. How do you approach that job?
Yeah, I think it depends on I guess what I'm doing. So largely since I got there, my role has kind of been on an F1 race weekend. I will help with the live blog, and then I'll also go into like video highlights. So a lot of the highlights on the page, like the session highlights, I will write them and I write the story for them. So a lot of them I kind of look for. I don't go into depth on that one, so I kind of just look for what time is he set? What tire was he on? What's the weather like? Who came closest to him? Did anyone spin? Any red flags? Did anyone get close to the barrier? What's the circuit like? Kind of those things. And I think with the live blog, you kind of, it's so intense, especially in the race day, but you kind of just look for, okay, what are the key things happening? Because you don't want to give information and then not finish it off. So you need to kind of go, okay, what are the key things happening here? And you kind of have your notes. Okay, what am I looking for today? What do I need to have so I can be as consistent as possible? So yeah, it just depends, I guess, also on the race, the Grand Prix, and what you can expect. So Silverstone is usually, you can expect it to be different to Montreal in a way, because different track, one is a circuit, the other is kind of a street circuit, I guess. And so you kind of just go along with what the weekend kind of entails. But yeah, largely my weekends are pretty much the same, and just preparing the same way, and just, I guess, finding where the content will be and finding where the story will be, for that weekend.
Yeah, and with F1 being so integrated into kind of social media, it's one of those things where the business and the sport is almost a little bit more, the crossover is a bit more significant than maybe something like football. You have this environment on, especially Twitter, right, where you have, the kind of F1 admin Twitter account, and then all the little the teams have ones, and there's all these, so many people have like, 10 to 15,000 follower, like small Twitter accounts where then they're interacting and they've got fans. And what's that like from inside the building, that sort of fan community, and now being a part of that, contributing to it? How do you view that whole thing?
I try and avoid social media. I'll be genuinely honest, but I do sometimes. I'm not gonna lie, I do sometimes peek and see what's going on. So if I ever write something that gets posted on the Twitter account, I will look at what people say and I will try and see. But largely, people just excited that you wrote about their favorite driver.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's insane. I think when you get to see the analytics of it all and you see the how many page views or how many views that story gets, you go, wow, those numbers are insane. So yeah, I think it's pretty surreal that many people can watch what you do, and I've one of the things I've been able to do is see the video production side of things and watch how they go about their work, and then you see the end product of it all, and then you go to the comment section and you just wish people would see how hard people were working to get something like that out. And yeah, it's pretty cool, and yeah, it's always pretty surreal when you see the numbers and fans looking at what you do. I think it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You spoke there about the scale of the company, how much people don't see that goes into the production. What is the scale like of the F1 office? How many people? I mean, I don't know about exact figure, but does it feel like a really big company where there's plenty of help where you need it and so many different specialized departments? What's the scale of the business like now?
It's quite good. Well, there are two offices, so different sides, I guess. But yeah, it's quite big, but the thing I would say is that it was quite small because everyone is within. You can message someone immediately, kind of in a way. So even if they're in the other office or they're at home, you can. It's quite, I guess, a small community of like media people. So yeah, I think it's quite a number of us, and a lot of people go. On a race weekend, there's a lot of people working behind the scenes to make sure that F1, can get content out, can get, the streaming stuff out and everything like that. So you get to see them and what they do. But it genuinely feels quite small because they're within you can message them very quickly, and also because when you work on the weekend, you tend to see the same faces. So if you go to the canteen, oh, there's Buxton, so, those type of things, I guess, make it feel smaller than it actually is. But yeah, there's a lot of people that work really, really hard to get the content out for F1.
Yeah, I mean, Will Buxton, he's definitely one of the sort of figureheads on the broadcast side, right, in front of the camera for Formula One. I mean, I suppose it sounds like a bit of a fan question, but have you met him? What's he like as a guy? Did you get to say hello?
Yeah, I've met him a few times. He's really nice. I met him. I went to testing in Bahrain, and we were in his office just working, and he sat next to me. And I had when I went to testing in Barcelona, and I took no pictures. So I got a lot of insults from my family, like, "Why didn't you take anything?" I'm like, "Well, I didn't really do it and anything like that." And I took these two kind of old school film cameras, and I left it on my table when I was working, and he saw it, and he's like, "I haven't seen one of these in a long time," and stuff like that. But yeah, he's really nice. He's nice to talk to. He's always up to talk to anyone. You can go up to him, say hi, and he's very open. So yeah, I think it's so surreal, really, that you get to see. Like, I saw Julian Palmer once, and I was on the same flight with him once, and I'm like, wow, Julian Palmer, former F1 driver. That's pretty immense. And yeah, so it's pretty surreal when you see the people that you see on TV all the time or on radio, or you watch their YouTube stuff, and then you get to actually sit next to them on a flight, or you get to be in the same office as them. That's something really special.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I would think I've experienced that a little bit doing the show, not obviously quite on the same scale as like people working inside Formula One, but yeah, like there'll be YouTube creators, or there's a photographer called Jamie Price who maybe you've seen. So he was one of the earliest. Yeah, he was one of the earliest episodes where literally I just I knew he had a big Instagram, kind of big TikTok following, and I love photography, and he's really, it's just, I think he's a real talent. His eye is incredible. And I just shot him an email, and I was like, "What, Jamie? Big fan, mate. Would you like to come on the show?" And he, came on, gave me a full hour of his time, and was so open about it. And I had a similar thing happened. Do you know Jonathan Wheatley, the Red Bull, the team radio guy?
Yeah,
he came on as well, and it was a similar thing where it's just like, bloody hell, mate, it's that guy from the telly. Like it's crazy. You start to you put these people in a box where like they're just the person from the telly, and then you actually interact with them, and it's like, oh, you can have a real conversation and kind of change their life in a way, right? Add a difference to it, and kind of change that connection. It's really special, and it's really cool to hear kind of your side of that.
Yeah, that's the thing, because you kind of put these people in a box and you kind of, I guess, put them on a pedestal that they will never kind of speak to me. And it's one of the things that I found at F1 is that everyone is so open to helping you. Everyone is so open to having a conversation with you. Like no one, like they could easily spurn you away. They don't. And I think that's the amazing part about the F1 community, is that it's a lot friendlier than I thought it would be.
Yeah, that might be because you stay off social media, Nadim. I'm not sure.
No, I do use it, but I will try and hide myself as much as possible from social media. I did a quiz once and my name was on it, and someone just messaged me on Twitter. I was like, "There's something wrong with this quiz," and I just looked and I went, "This is why I don't interact with you guys." I guess it was unnecessary, but it's such a great place.
No, when I interviewed Jonathan, I think immediately I was a Red Bull shill. I was told to do, he'd given me questions before the interview, and I'd love to be part of a big conspiracy with the FIA. That sounds like fun. I'm not, but that sounds really interesting. But unfortunately, it's not quite as everyone's wanting people very quick to criticize, right? Earlier you spoke about, as we go from Canada to Silverstone, it's a big change of track dynamic. Probably a change of weather too, but we got rain in Montreal, so maybe it'll carry over in that way. But what are the differences for you as we travel between those two tracks, and how do you view the kind of present situation in Formula One at the moment?
It's really interesting because I think everyone's kind of waiting to see what are they going to be like at Silverstone. I think the last time we saw them on an actual F1 track was Barcelona, and they looked really good, and Hamilton was really fast in the race, and the thought was that if Magnussen hadn't hit him, could he have won the race, kind of thing. So I guess if Silverstone will be really interesting to watch, but Max Verstappen is on one right now, and he just looks in supreme form. But then again, Matteo Binotto said that with this new power unit that Leclerc has, he can attack these next few races before the summer break. That'll be really interesting to see, because Leclerc he's been immense this season, especially in qualifying, and he's been really let down with some, reliability issues in the last couple of races and everything like that. But I think it's the title race is still there. I know Verstappen has this still 46-point lead. Perez is still in this. Sainz has said he's back and he feels more comfortable with the car. I think really, I don't think we've seen the best of the season yet. I think there's still so much great racing to come. And I'm so excited to cover it. And Silverstone is kind of the start of that.
Absolutely. I think it's that three-way title fight that everyone's we had it, the V8 era, you had McLaren, Red Bull, Ferrari. It did seem like for, certain periods, you had all three cars quick at the same time, right? You weren't just going between race to race, seeing one might be better here, one might be better at the next track. They were all good at most of the tracks. And I think, fingers crossed for the second half of this season. It could be really, really special if Mercedes bring that technical development. With the teammate dynamic at Mercedes this year, how do you think that's going to play out? We know every driver hates losing to their teammate, and Lewis has only done it. Well, he was joint on points with Fernando Alonso in his first ever year. I think there was 1 year where he lost to Button, and then obviously the year where he lost to Rosberg. But that's, as a record, that's basically better than anyone else ever. But I suppose Michael maybe did when he maybe lost to his teammate in the early years, and I guess Michael also lost to Rosberg in the later Mercedes years. But
it was late.
It's a later Michael Schumacher is not going to be as quick, but he did have some amazing performances, and it's that storyline, the fact that he actually did come back to Formula One and then almost start Mercedes, which was then the Lewis Hamilton. Lewis took his seat effectively after he retired, and then it's just that was a bit of a tangent there. I was meant to ask about George Russell and Lewis Hamilton, not Michael Schumacher. What do you think the dynamics like in that team at the moment? Two British drivers at the British Grand Prix. are they going to be friendly together, or bit frosty? If the car gets better, the relationship could get worse, right?
I guess you would think so, but then again, I think I actually weirdly believe that the car not being where they want it to be for the first few races probably helped their relationship, because they're not competing in that same way. They're actually trying to, I guess, get the car to the front. And that could probably have been the best thing for them, where it's like, okay, look, we're not where we want to be, but let's help each other get there. And of course, I think Rosberg said it the other day that Hamilton hates losing to his teammate. And I think every driver hates losing to their teammate. No one, like, Verstappen won't be happy if Perez beats him. Like, as much as he'll respect it, he just won't like it. So,
100%. Yeah.
No one enjoys it. Sainz does not enjoy losing to Leclerc right now. So, I do think that we've kind of heard from them that, because Russell has been immense this season, he's been top 5 every single race, but that Lewis has been doing the experiments. That's kind of the conversation that's been, and that's what Mercedes have said. So I'm really interested to see what happens if their car is good this in Silverstone, what happens within that dynamic. But I actually think them working on the car together has probably, really helped them. And Toto Wolff has said, that their relationship is really good and they work really well together, and he loves watching them in team meetings. So that's a really good sign. But, as we just said, no one likes losing to their teammate, and Russell is really good, but Hamilton is Hamilton. Then, he said it as well, like, you're going against the benchmark in F1 technically, which is Hamilton, and you're going to compete against him. And Russell will want to prove himself, and he'll want to show that he is the future of Mercedes, but Hamilton, I guess, is still Hamilton. So I love the dynamic. I think it's probably the strongest driver lineup on the grid. But then again, so is Red Bull. Red Bull's really strong. So is Ferrari, and it's really great to watch, actually. And you get the feeling that if those 6 cars can win a race, boy, we're in for some good racing, like, for the rest of the season. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it does seem like, Sainz, the P2 in Canada, it's significant for him on his record. It was, it's one of those unfortunate stats, really, that it was the 5th time he'd ever finished second, right? And that's, and he'd never won a race. That's brutal. But
it feels like it's coming for Sainz. It does, like, it's a matter of when, not if. I believe that he's far too good a driver not to win a race this season.
Yeah, but if both cars finish qualifying, your money's always going to be on Charles, and that means he has to go past Charles in the race, and that means he has to not go by his team orders, probably, because Charles is ahead in the World Championship, Nadim. So there's so many. It's one of those things about Formula One. There's so many layers to everything. There's so many, like, well, this happened, well, then what about this? What about this? And I'm sure getting into it on the writing side, is it hard sometimes to kind of tell the full story when actually in the notes you really have to be quite quick and sort of punchy with the details? How do you reduce down to the essential information and kind of filter out the stuff I say, which is just sort of waffle?
No, it's one of the things you had to learn. Because I remember when there are a lot of few writers at F1, and everyone subs what you do, and they go through everything with and then they go, okay, this is where you need to work on, and this is what you need to do. And one of the things they wanted me to do at the beginning was flesh out my story and say, look, you need to add a bit of context. You can't just go straight into everything. So I started adding context, and then someone went, well, you need to kind of reduce the context a bit and try and be as quick and snappy as possible. So you have to find the right balance. So one of the things I've gone with is, on a race weekend, I'll say, this is how they did in qualifying. This what led to this what happened in the race. Did anything significant really happen in the race that they did? Maybe the pit stop didn't work, or maybe he overtook someone, stuff like that. So it's really, really finding, I guess I kind of think of it from the perspective, the reader didn't watch the race. So in, like, the quickest amount of time, how can I tell them how their driver went and how that driver won in the race? So but because so much happens on the weekend, and because there's so much, like, it's really, really action packed. Like, it's really quick, and it's really intense. To pick out what is actually necessary to say it's quite, like, it's quite confusing at times, but you do kind of get used to it with time.
And do you feel like, since that first day where you walked in and you're nervous in the big office, that learning curve kicked in, do you see the evidence in your work of a real kind of development in skill and learning those rules, that writing style?
Yeah, absolutely. I got a message the other day from, I guess, my boss, who said, we went through a story, and, like, this is your best one yet. And I think that made me feel really good. And yeah, you can definitely see it. I think one of the things I kind of, my mindset coming into this thing was that you need to believe in yourself as a writer, but also realize that you're not where you need to be, and there's so much still to learn. So who I was, I guess, as a writer a month ago to who I am now is vastly different as well. I've kind of developed my own style of how I want to say things, and one of the things I do is I read a lot. Like I have subscriptions to every newspaper there is going. I try to read as much as I can. I read everything that gets sent to my desk at F1. If Lawrence Barretto writes something, I'm definitely reading it. And and just to see how they go about it. Because one of the things I struggled with was actually the intro. Like, how am I feeding that into everything that I do? So, I think reading definitely helps. And you can see it in my writing, just not being arrogant, but I've just improved so much. But I know for a fact there's still a ways to go. I still feel like I can improve in so many things. And I don't think I'll ever get to the point where I think I'm perfect at it. But I think I'm working towards that. And it's definitely got better.
Yeah, you mentioned Lawrence Barretto there. In terms of him as a writer, but also who else do you look to as kind of inspirations, or people you look to emulate in your work in the maybe even there's Lawrence and Will, of course, and Tom Clarkson as well. He does the press conferences. He's really brilliant. But who stands out to you?
Lawrence is. Watching Lawrence on a race weekend is insane, because not only does he do the writing and the features and stuff like that, he'll go and he'll do press conferences and he'll interview the drivers, and then he'll rush up and start writing. And Lawrence is pretty amazing in what he does. And watching him sometimes around the office, you get to see. I don't think he knows sometimes I'm actually just watching him, watching what he does. So, he's one. I think Rebecca Clancy at the Times. I think she's really good at what she does, and I love reading what she writes about. And yeah, I think there are quite a few. I love Rich. I don't remember who writes for The Independent. But yeah, I can't remember the name. But I think that person's really good. Chris Medlin as well. He does some stuff
brilliant.
at F1 as well. He's brilliant at what he does. And so yeah, there are quite a few writers I watch, and even like some of the guys at F1 who I guess their names aren't always on the website. The way they write as well is everyone's kind of got their own unique style, even within that framework of how you write for F1. So I guess it's developing your own style. I'm trying to develop mine, but just watching how they introduce something, like, it's a bit different each and every single one of them, but within that framework. So there are quite a few writers that I love, even outside of F1. There are quite a few that I will go and read and what they do and how they go about introducing certain things, or how they go about writing a certain topic. But I definitely think within F1, I think you look at Lawrence, you look at Chris Medlin, Rebecca Clancy, to me, I think she's brilliant. I think she's absolutely brilliant. And yeah, even some of the F2 people that work at F2 now, they're really good. I love reading their race reports. So yeah, I read everything that comes across my desk. So yeah,
it's really and you almost, that is going to make you a better writer too. Consuming other people's content, learning what they put into it to make theirs good, and also respecting the fact, as you mentioned, everyone, the value is in having a unique style. While you can read as much as you like to learn how other people do their writing, there is a split between that and then what is ultimately going to shape your own kind of narrative style and kind of editorial style, I suppose. How do you see your role progressing? Do you think it's just going up higher, working more on the website and just progressing inside of F1? Do you think the division, it's better, you'd rather be at F1 corporate than one of the teams? How do you view the kind of situation regarding your future in Formula One? It's a big question, and I know maybe it doesn't have to be. Not everyone would have I'm sure plenty of people wouldn't have a prepared answer for that at all. But what are your expectations like of the future for you?
The future. Oh, that's a great question. I've got a bit of time left at F1, and we'll kind of see what happens. I might continue there for much longer than my internship, because I've enjoyed it and they seem to, I guess, like me. Hopefully, fingers crossed, and hopefully that can continue. But I have, I don't want to work in F1. I want to do cricket. Cricket was my favorite sport growing up. I'd love to work there one day. I'd love to do football. I'd love to do so many different sports and try in different, just try different things as well. And, of course, writing now is where I want to be. I absolutely love writing news stories. I'd love to. I love doing features sometimes for myself when I used to write for myself on my website. But I'd love to try. Well, you do radio. I'd love to try it one day. I'd love to get in front of the camera one day. I don't know that when that will ever happen. I don't know if it will ever happen, but I'd love to try it. I think, I'm pretty young, and I think now is kind of the time where I want to try everything. And maybe sometimes I want it a bit too much, but I just want to try as much as I can. I've seen the video production stuff. I wanted to see what they did, and they're pretty amazing in what they do. I think when you watch the actual interviews and then the way it comes out, you go, that's pretty amazing, and stuff like that. So yeah, I think the future is what will be will be. I think I'm pretty happy at F1 right now, and I'm learning so much and working with some incredible people, and I hope it continues. But yeah, I think futures. Hopefully, it's pretty bright. Hopefully.
And I wondered if you could compare the sport of cricket with the sport of Formula One, because it seems like they're really at far ends of the spectrum in regards to, I mean, you got the 100 now, you got T20 if you want, minute to minute action, but that's about it. In 5-day test cricket, you're not anywhere near the edge of your seat until the final day maybe. But how do you view the difference between those two, and what is it about cricket as well that draws your eye and kind of brings passion to your life?
Oh God, cricket I think is a family thing. My grandfather played cricket for Sierra Leone, which is where I'm from. My mum was a huge fan of cricket, so I think my dad is as well. One of my first words I think was cricket bat. I actually used to take those big like 1 liter bottles and turn it into cricket bats, like in barbecues and stuff like that. So cricket was the first love, but it's really different from F1, and I'd say, but they're very similar in the sense that I always look at cricket and it's the most individual team sport, in that 11 guys, but 11 guys having to do a different job in a way. And I think F1 is kind of the same thing in that it's a team sport, but you have two drivers on the same team who are working together, but also looking to beat each other and looking to outperform the other. So there's some similarities there in that it's a very individualistic team thing. But, I guess at the end of the day, the team comes first. But yeah, they are very different. And, even you look at football as well. Football, I think, is the most collective team because if the 11 don't work together, it doesn't work. But yeah, it's very different, but I guess that there are some similarities, I think, with all sports actually.
Yeah, I think in like the management style of the team, it's something that you see the team principals like to put out. Like they almost want to create an environment where it would feel like a football team. And while at the end of the day, it's the driver driving the car, it's up to them to decide how quickly it goes around the lap, and there's nothing that there's a limit to what anyone else in the team can contribute, and at the end of the day it's going to come down to the driver to bring it across the line. But then you've still got every single other person in that team, whether they're putting it together, they're designing it, they're working on maintaining it, so many different specializations. You could be in the pit stops, you could be doing tech, audio, computer, so many different things, even just in the race team. And fostering that environment where the sort of the rising tide lifts all the boats and everyone as a part of the team rises together. I think there's no better person at doing that than Lewis, right? As a figurehead, motivational figurehead, as a driver, he really embodies that spirit, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think people kind of get onto him sometimes when he's a bit downbeat, and he goes, I think there was something before the other day he's interviewing, he's like, this car is so bad. And people
that was leaked on purpose. Nadim, I will not let you tell me that the video production team at Formula One didn't 100% know that was in the clip.
I'm not part of it. I didn't know. I just saw it come across my TV on Sky, and I was like, oh my God, that came out. So yeah, but I think I think you get different type of leaders in a way, and I guess Lewis is more from the front in a way because he's kind of, no one's God, but he's kind of like this otherworldly being. Is like, oh my God, that's Lewis Hamilton. He walked across me once and I went, whoa. Like it was a different level of wow. So I think when you have someone on your team like that, and I think as well in that, for Mercedes, I'm not saying the job is simple, but you kind of have in your mind, I just need to give him a good car and he will deliver for me. And when you have that kind of confidence in someone, it just makes, I guess, your life pretty easy. And I was looking, when the new technical kind of the new change in the 2022 cars came, I think everything was kind of. I think everyone kind of expected to see the same 10 cars across the grid and line up, and for the pictures, and everyone expected the same cars to be seen. It was 10 different cars, and you just go and look up and down the paddock, and you go, these are teams full of geniuses and incredibly smart brains, and then you've got the two drivers they're trusting to give this machinery to, and the 20 of the best drivers in the world. And I think just having that confidence in your driver and knowing that, I just need to give him a good car and he'll be fine. I think Ferrari have that in their drivers. I think Red Bull have it in their drivers as well. And I think it's an amazing feeling to have. And that in itself is great leadership when when you have the backing of a team and they trust you. And I think Lewis he's had that, and I think he has that Mercedes with everything that went on this season, with all the times where it's been a bit slow. Every single time he's been, even though sometimes he's been a bit downbeat, which is understandable. He's only human. But at times when he comes out and because we keep pushing and stuff like that, I think really helps the team.
Yeah, I remember when in Turkey in 2020 when he crossed the line for the 7th title. It was, I don't remember the exact wording, but yeah, the fact that he was so ready to embody a positive message to his fans. He knows how many people look up to him as an idol. Fans like you were when you were a little kid. They see this guy who is he's bigger than life. He's the fastest guy in the world. He's taking the danger that goes into it, the speed, and he's better than everyone. And yeah, also I completely agree as well. You mentioned, he gets down sometimes, but that is part of being human. And while he is going to be that, still we rise, motivational guy, and then there'll be a point in a race where he's like, oh, this car's rubbish, we should retire, we're stuck at the back, whatever. But it's like, look, if anyone that has done anything difficult in their lives will relate to that more than, oppose it and be like, oh, he's being negative. Everyone has these kind of things where I'm sure you've approached an intro of an article, right, and been like, oh, mate, this I can't write this. I want it should give up. And then you come around to it at the end of the day.
Yeah, my mum, if she was on this call right now, she'd say that I'm the biggest moaner that there actually is going. I will call her just to, like, I can't believe this is not working. Like, I can't do this. And she just go, yeah. And then I'll figure it out. Sometimes you just, even when people get on, like, the team radio stuff where they talk to the engineer a certain way, I kind of go, look, they're in a competitive environment. You have 20 of the most competitive guys in the world kind of racing under kind of very difficult cars and intense conditions. And sometimes things aren't going well, and sometimes they need to vent. And you can't expect, I guess, 20 perfect children in a way under such conditions. Like, they are doing something incredibly difficult. And yeah, I sometimes think, I think people will expect perfection from them, and I think no. Like, I think I moan. I get frustrated with things, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to figure it out. It just means I need to kind of go through this period of frustration before coming out on the other side. I think Lewis is the same thing. It's the same thing in Spain when he said, let's retire the car. Sometimes he just needed that down moment, and he probably just needed to overtake one car and go, I'm in the zone now. I'm good to go. Sometimes you see Max get frustrated on the radio. It doesn't mean he's in a bad mental space. It just means I need to kind of go through this to come out on the other side. So I think it's just a natural human reaction to get a bit down sometimes. But it doesn't mean you're not going to come back up. It just means you're a bit down. And, I think everyone has those moments.
Yeah, and so much of the responsibility in those moments then goes to the team. We mentioned earlier, the team is so much more than the driver, and a huge part of that happens on the radio to the race engineer. In those critical moments, we know Peter Boddington, that calm voice on the radio for Lewis, and the connection they have. And I think also Lewis's trainer, Angela, right? Probably Peter and Angela are those two people at Mercedes who are closest to Lewis and play such a big role in maintaining everything, keeping everything where it needs to be in his physical, mental health, and keeping him up as that performer. There was another story you mentioned earlier, being a positive leader and leading the team. It was at Monaco before the race. Do you remember at Monaco where it was like delay, raining, and then it stopped raining, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" And the starting grid, when everyone was lined up on the starting grid, and it just started chucking it down with rain, the tires flying back and forth everywhere. And I think it was Ted Kravitz in his notebook had mentioned, or maybe it was in the race coverage, that Jost Capito, the Williams team principal, was like properly in the mix. Like, he was pushing stuff around, helping people. Like, he was really involved in that effort with the team. And I think, yeah, the fact that the team principals, there are different ways of doing it. I would say maybe Toto is more of a businessman, whereas, and then you have Yost, who's a little bit more kind of hands-on, but also to some extent that comes with the context of the team and the fact that Mercedes is such a huge business. There's going to be a role to play there. I should probably come up with a question now. I've been talking for a while. How do you view the team principals in Formula One? Who stands out to you as embodying the similar spirit to Lewis as being a great leader?
I think they're all fantastic, actually, and I think a lot has been made about Horner and Wolf and their kind of rivalry in some stage, but I love it. I think you have 10 guys who are leading billion-dollar, million-dollar industries and racing teams, and they're looking to win. And I love Toto Wolff. I love the way he comes across in interviews. I love listening to him speak because he's always very honest. And I think he did an interview.
Well, I don't know, Nadim. I might have to call you out on that one because him and Jonathan, he's been firing some shots at Jonathan. I've got to back my boy there. As much as I'm a Red Bull shill, I've got to back my boy in that one. But I agree on everything else.
No, yeah, but I know it's just coming across in interviews. Like anytime I listen to the Toto Wolff interview, I've never felt like he lied to me. I think.
No, you're right. You're right.
So the other day, he did an interview with Martin Brundle, and I think after he called the Mercedes a something box, and he did an interview with Martin Brundle in Canada where he kind of just said what the car is, the issue with the car, and everything like that. And I love listening to that as well. And Christian Horner as well. I think he's great in front of the media. I think he's absolutely wonderful. But as well, my favorite. I love listening to Andreas Seidl. I think he's a really good team principal. I maybe McLaren aren't where they want to be at the moment, but I for some reason Seidl has always stood out to me. I just love listening to him talk. I feel like he's the type of team principal I want to work under. I think they're all great, but for some reason Seidl, and as well Binotto as well. I love. There's a picture of Binotto on video when Schumacher was with Ferrari, and I think there was a video.
I've seen that.
Yeah, I love that video. I think it just shows like here he was when he was younger, and he's worked his way up to being in this position now. So I think Binotto and Seidl, I have a special place in my heart for them. But obviously, I grew up a Mercedes fan. I grew up a Lewis Hamilton fan, so I became a Mercedes fan, and Toto Wolff is the head. So, but I think Binotto and Seidl is something. There's something I love about. Just listen to them talk, and Binotto's story as well. It's something about those two, I think.
Yeah, Binotto. Yeah, that video is brilliant. I'll put a link to it if you're listening on YouTube. I'll stick it in the description. But yeah, it's so cool. I mean, to be honest, all right, I first saw that video and I thought, right, Binotto is a massive nerd. I had no idea that he was like in the engine room. But it was not a negative comment. It was just like the fact that he was so technically oriented, and the people can come from different, like Jost Capito, he worked in WRC before he came to Formula One. Yeah. Binotto was on the powertrain side as a literally putting them together, and then has worked his way up that way.
My crack came from him and Seidl both came from BMW. I can't remember.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and and Toto Wolff was Williams, and I actually only found out the other day that he's a billionaire apparently.
He's properly rich. Yeah,
I did not know that. I just thought you can come from different backgrounds as well. Like you don't have to, and the main thing is that they have the backing of their teams, and you listen to people that work under Toto, Horner, Wolff, Binotto, Seidl, Otmar Safnauer, Gunther Steiner, up and down the paddock. Everyone will tell you they love working for them, and even Frederick Vasseur as well. I sat one time on an interview with him, and he's someone you want to work for as well. I can understand why people at Alfa Romeo like working for him. They come across really well, and you can see why they're put in charge of these massive corporations that these 10 teams are.
Yeah, I was trying to think, because you mentioned that you cover lots of sports beyond Formula One, football, and the NBA particularly.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe I feel like Popovich might have been good in Formula One, right?
Yeah, I think Steve Kerr as well of the Warriors. I think he'd been really good. Because he has this relaxed demeanor. I think he'd be a bit like who's the most relaxed one? I think I think Binotto's quite relaxed. He never seems phased.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Well, because also, you know, Horner and Wolf as well, they used to be drivers, and we see a lot of people in, and of course, obviously, Steve Kerr used to play for the Bulls, and there's a lot of people also as like commentators, right, and also people that work for the teams. Having the experience as a driver is a positive thing, and it allows you to connect with the drivers to understand what they're feeling in the car more directly. And it was also something we spoke about through this podcast, right? We spoke to Jack Nichols, the guy that does commentary for Formula E and Radio 5 Live.
Yeah.
His partnership with Jolie and Palmer, and that how they're able to like bring in, they'll notice something that no one else can notice.
Yeah.
Or they'll understand language that no one else can notice. Yeah. I was trying to think now if we maybe go from NBA to football. Maybe Klopp. I mean, Klopp would be good. He's funny, right? He definitely is good in front of the media. How would he be in Formula One?
Oof, God.
I mean, he would never leave. He loves where he is right now, of course. But it's a hypothetical world.
I'm trying to think. Oh, God. I think Jose Mourinho would be really good, and I think he'd be like Horner. I think they're very similar in the way they go about things.
He probably. I mean, he would piss a lot of people off pretty quickly. Jose. He's not going to put up with nothing.
Yeah, Horner doesn't do that either. Like Horner and Wolf, the reason they've been going back and forth is because they don't really hide how they feel about each other or how they feel about a certain thing. Like they're very honest, and I think Mourinho has that about him. I think Klopp has that about him. I'd be interested to see how Guardiola works with that team as well. But I think as well, one of the things they have, I think each team, you mentioned earlier about some of them were the different backgrounds. I think it depends on the team. I think certain teams need a certain kind of leader. I don't, would Horner be able to work as the leader of Mercedes? Would Wolf be able to work as a leader of Red Bull? Maybe not. They'll probably do a good job, but it's like I think they suit where they are now. And I think Klopp, like for example, Klopp suits Liverpool. Klopp is Liverpool. Like that, it seems like the perfect marriage. And I think if he came into F1, it's like, what would be the perfect team for him? Like who would he build up? I think to myself, someone like McLaren or an Alpine, they can get to the front. That would be really nice. But yeah.
I know. I was trying to think also the culture around management in football is really weird because obviously probably more than in Formula One, the manager affects what happens on the field, right? He's picking, substitutes, formation, tactics, all that sort of thing. Obviously, you've got the captain there too, and plenty of staff behind the manager to help play a role in that. But really, the manager is so integrated. And then I think what you get from that, when a club starts to perform badly, people are like, right, get the manager out. And then you get this thing that happens. You get a new manager every 2 years. A club falls into Man United status or something where, like, you just keep changing manager. No one's happy at a given time, and everyone starts to blame the manager. But you rarely ever see that in Formula One, right? Not a lot of people are calling for like Jos Capito to get fired because Williams are at the back, or Binotto. I mean, maybe there are some tifosi who would like to see Binotto out. But you know what I mean, right? That the culture is different.
Yeah, I appreciate that because I think as football fans sometimes we forget that managers, that's their job, and they're paid nicely, but it's their job, and you're calling for someone to get fired from their job, and no one comes into the office at F1 and tells me that I should get fired. And I guess it's on a different scale, but like, could you imagine that someone coming into your studio now and telling you, I think you should be fired, and it must be difficult for them. And I like that about F1. I like that, no one, I know who's calling for Capito's job. No one. Like, and if he did leave, like, no one would really not care, but no one would be like, no one would kind of, I guess, make a fuss in a way, or make it such a negative or something like that. It just I like that culture in F1 and I also like the culture that I guess the teams like Alpine and McLaren and Aston Martin have adopted, where they understand that they're not where they want to be, but they have a vision of where they want to get to. I think it was Alpine that mentioned 100 races, or was it maybe Aston? I'm not really sure, but something like that I think is really cool. Where it's like we're not just living for today; we're kind of planning and we're going. We probably can't compete with Mercedes and Red Bull and Ferrari now, but give us a few years time. Let's build something here. And I like that about the F1 culture. I don't think I've never, especially in the last few years, I felt it sometimes uncomfortable to call for a manager's job in football, because as much as I guess we're fans and everything like that, and I'm an Arsenal fan, people want me to say that Arteta should leave. It's his job, and I feel very uncomfortable for saying that he should get fired from his job. Even if I don't agree with everything he's done, something like that, I think it's It's what I love about F1. Like, no, you don't hear any calls for, Haas have had a good start to the season. Now they're ninth in the constructors. You don't go, I think Gunter Steiner should be fired. Like, that doesn't solve much. So I like that culture in F1.
Yeah, but then I suppose that also it stops with the drivers. People will still say, I mean, Latifi at the moment, right? The conversation at the moment is, I mean, I'm not sure. I don't think it's reached the level of being on the F1 website, but I believe the Piastri news is just about before that stage, right? Where that is something that deal's probably going to go through, and Nicholas Latifi won't be in Formula One last year. But we did see the worst part of that culture, especially after the finale last year. F1 fans, well, that the thing about calling for the managers, the team principals jobs, there's still some self-reflection to be had about the way people talk about drivers sometimes. Do you feel that?
Yeah. I mean, as a Hamilton fan, and I'll be honest, I watched that race with my head in my hands. I was distraught at Hamilton losing that championship. And of course, you do look at Latifi and go, why'd you crash? But no one crashes on purpose. And, I think everything...
Well, Singapore 2008, there was a coordinated safety car.
Oh God, yeah.
So that's the thing with Formula One. There's always a well, actually moment, Nadim, but I'm sorry to interrupt you there.
No, it's true. I think, what did Rosberg went off on Monaco, apparently, or something like that. So, yeah. But no, like Latifi is not crashing on purpose. I'll say that. And, I think it's tough because I think someone wrote a feature the other day on the F1 website. I think it was Lawrence, about that Alpine kind of conversation about what could happen to Piastri next year, because he deserves to be in F1. He's too good to be sitting on the sidelines. But you do look at it and go, Latifi is trying his hardest to be good at something, and not to be good, but he's trying his hardest to get to make his name. He's working hard. He isn't like shirking his responsibilities or anything like that. And so, of course, he makes mistakes. That's life, and he's working hard. And whether or not I think both he and Albon's contracts expire at the end of the season. Apparently, I think, I'm not really sure, but I think it'd be very interesting to see what happens with Piastri. But I don't like the conversation. I never like the when it gets to a rude point. I think you can have an opinion on drivers, and you can say which one's the best, and you can say which one he needs to work and everything like that. But I never liked it to get to the point where Latifi has to put out a statement about the abuse he gets. It's unnecessary. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't mean it doesn't crash. It's unnecessary half the time, and that's one of the reasons why I avoid social media as much as I can. But yeah, I think it'd be very interesting to see. I think the driver market is always the most entertaining part mid-season, or what happens. But yeah, I think very interesting to see what happens with Williams, especially.
Absolutely, the driver market. It's really cool because I think also now with Formula E growing, with IndyCar as well. We had the I don't know if you watch much IndyCar, but the commentator for it in the UK, a guy called Tom Gaymore. He's a friend of the show. He's been on twice, and he's been really lovely to me in kind of coming on for interviews and sharing his insight into the sport. But the way that, like, probably Latifi, right? While he may leave Formula One, it's not the end of the road, pardon the pun, driving wise. And there's so many other categories, whether it's World Endurance, whether it's IndyCar, whether it's Formula E. The transfer market of drivers is unique, and because it's almost like a borderline where they're leaving Formula One, but they're not leaving motorsport. Yeah. And you kind of have these different forms throughout. Do you watch other categories? How is that something you just don't have time for with the burden of the F1 job?
I do. I watch a bit. I'm not like well versed. I can have like a proper conversation about it, but I do. Sometimes when like after a race weekend or after a race or qualifying, whatever it is, the screen will still be on, and it'll go to IndyCar or whatever's happening, and you just catch a bit of it and stuff like that. And you see someone like, I think Callum Aylett's there as well, and I think Grosjean's in IndyCar as well, stuff like that. So, I do watch a bit of it. And you're right in saying that it's not the end of their F1 career, or their motorsport career. I think, of course, F1 is where everyone, I guess, wants to be, as drivers. But, it doesn't mean your career's ended. We've seen Grosjean's gone off and he's doing pretty well. And you see other guys. I thought Schwarzman would would be in F1, but he's not, and he's somewhere else doing. I think he's in IndyCar as well, isn't he? And he's or somewhere else.
I don't think no. Christian Lundgaard went to IndyCar. I know that.
Yeah, sorry, Lundgaard. Yeah, Lundgaard's the one as well. I think someone like Nick de Vries as well. Nick de Vries won F2. He could have found a seat in F1, and now he's done really well at Formula E. So, it's not the end of your motorsport career. And the TV, look, you don't get behind the wheel of an F1 car if you're not good enough to get behind the wheel of an F1 car. Some are more talented than others. That happens, but he's not like some terrible racing driver. And I think people need to kind of get off his back.
Yeah, and I also wanted to mention, sorry, we're getting close to the end here, but Zhou Guanyu, his race performances throughout the season, he got points in the first race, points now in Canada too, even more after after Fernando Alonso's penalty. But he's been a real talent, right? What's it been like covering his entrance? First ever Chinese driver, lots of eyes. I mean, the nation of China, the scale of everything that happens there. Him as a sporting figure for that country, amazing. What's it been like viewing his career, writing about that?
I love it. I absolutely love it, and I got to sit in as well on the interview he did, and you're someone you root for. Like, he came across really well, and he was really nice, and you really root for him, and I wrote about him the other day after what happened after his P8 in Canada, and he sounds so happy. Like, he's had really bad luck in the last few races, and I think he and Sainz have had the most DNF this season. I think 3. So, and it's not always been easy for him, but I think he's coming really along. And I think the issue I think people have is they talk about, well, why isn't Piastri here? But Zhou doesn't mean Zhou doesn't deserve to be in F1. He's really good, and he's doing well. And for rookie drivers, and I think Schumacher's kind of getting the same thing now, it takes certain people a little bit longer to develop, and it takes some people a while to get there. It doesn't mean they'll never get there. It just takes them a while. So you need to have patience with them. And people expected Zhou to come in and to immediately match Valtteri Bottas. Valtteri Bottas is a race winner, and he's driven for Mercedes, and it was going to take him a while to figure it out. But by all the sounds of it, he's constantly asking Valtteri questions. He's asking the right questions. He's to improve, and he's getting better. And he beat Valtteri in the last 2 qualifying sessions, and he finished 8th in the race. And if not for the retirement in Baku, he could have finished in the top 10 there as well. So I think he's really doing a really good job, and you root for him. And I hope he has a good career in F1. And I've enjoyed writing about him, and even listening to his interviews. I think it's been really cool.
Yeah, I can imagine joining Formula One, as a Chinese driver, such a obviously English speaking, but also UK focused kind of sport and media presence. It would be, a fascinating experience to enter Formula One through his eyes. But yeah, we've really seen him come in and prove how good he is, how much he deserves that seat, and how fast he is in the car. I wanted to ask lastly, as we go to Silverstone, a bit more of a kind of detailed race prediction. What do you think? Yeah. We know the upgrade packages for a lot of teams, the cars will be different to how we've seen them before. What's going to happen, Nadim? Give me the answers.
Oh God, I wish I knew. I truly hope Mercedes get closer to Ferrari and Red Bull, and not just because I'm a Hamilton fan or whatever. I just really hope. I really want to see that six driver battle, because I think you have 6 of the best drivers in the 3 best cars. And if they can have something close to equal machinery, I think it'd be such a spectacle to watch. And you could have a situation where, Leclerc starts 2nd and Sainz is in 6th. It's that close. So I'm really looking forward to that, and hopefully we get that. But as well, I'm really interested in the midfield battle. And with Alpine have looked really strong in the last couple of races. McLaren haven't really been as themselves, especially in Canada. So I really like that battle, and I'm really interested to see how it plays out. Aston Martin as well, I thought looked really good in FP1, FP2, and FP3, and then struggled in qualifying. So I wonder what happened there. But you can't, with the way Verstappen's driving right now, and how on form he's been. I think he's won 6 out of the first 9 races. You be a brave man to bet against him, but he's also never won the British Grand Prix. He has won a Silverstone, but he's never won the British Grand Prix. So that'll be something he'll want to have to his list. And I think they've already been talking about wanting to make up for last year. So, there'll be a force to reckon with this weekend. But, Binotto did say Leclerc with now a fresh power unit these next few races before the summer break. We've seen Leclerc, he's dominant in qualifying. He's probably the best qualifier probably been the best qualifier this season. He'll have something to say, and he'll want to make us kind of a statement that says this title isn't over. I don't think you've won it yet. So I think you can expect the Ferrari Red Bull battle as well, but I'm looking forward to trying to see Mercedes get closer to those two.
So, all right, are we thinking maybe Verstappen from Charles from Lewis would be a nice podium, or maybe Lewis, Lewis from everyone else would be ideal?
That the fan in me would love to see Hamilton on the top step of Silverstone again, but as someone who's covering the sport, I want to see that 16 battle, that six driver battle, and even Russell's driven really well. I know they talk about the Hamilton taking being the sacrificial lamb, but Russell's done a good job, and he'll want to win a Silverstone as well. So yeah, I is what you can't forget Perez. I'm just so enamored by this season. Perez has been brilliant, and he's really suffered. He crashed on Saturday in Montreal, and then really suffered in the race on Sunday. And he'll want to close that gap to Max as well. So I think it's such an enticing product that we're gonna get at Silverstone. Even looking ahead to the sprint in Austria, what could happen there? So what I will predict, you'll get a really good weekend of racing because every weekend has been great so far.
Absolutely, and I think a lot of people, I know I'll be relying on your coverage because I'm going to be at the race, and the fact that you can only be at one corner at a time, and you got to keep in touch with the timings on the website and that sort of thing. So keep your eye out for some of Nadim's writing. But I think we can wrap the interview up here. This has been one of our best episodes, mate. This was really cool to hear about the insides of Formula One and your experience working in that. So I'll say from me, really, really big thank you for coming on the show, making it a great one.
No problem. You're actually my first interview, first time someone's ever asked to interview me. So I appreciate that. But yeah, I don't think I hadn't heard of the show before, but actually looking out for it now. So thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
Awesome. Well, we'll let the outro music play, and I'll be back next week with more episodes of the Jack Threlfall Show.